You too. What it do? It's your boy Alpha West, man. It's actually been a couple of days since I got on here, and since the last time I made a video, I've just been taking time for myself. You know, um, I knew October was gonna be a heavy month, and I guess to a certain degree, I was just not entirely prepared on the weight of the energies. Because if you look at it now, right, astrologically, uh, Mars is in retrograde, right, and Mercury is in Scorpio. Retrograde for Mars just means that it's a lot of um, deep fights. You get what I'm saying? A lot of expressions, a lot of masculine energies that are going to be expressed. Uh, and Mercury being a sign of communication, it being in Scorpio just also means like depth, emotional. So that means like people or things coming together to actually voice how they feel inside and bring it out into the third dimension. And in a time like this, I thought like, damn, what would be a better time than to actually speak about the three level of enlightenment, you know? And I always have this confusion when when people speak about how and what level of enlightenment they are in terms of when they use words, because all words are just third dimensional representation of what is happening in the other dimension. So when we use words, we're just using energy signatures from those higher dimensions and bringing them down and expressing them, because third dimensional beings, that's what we do. Uh, we bring things, although we are multidimensional, we always use the third dimensional because we're in the third dimension and this is how things play out. So, what is the difference between being woke, being conscious, and being spiritual? Because it's not the same thing. As much as you hear a lot of people be like, "Oh, you gotta stay woke. You gotta. I'm a conscious being and I'm a spiritual being." But spiritual being is kind of, it's not really a word that is thrown around a lot, because the citations of what it means to be spiritual and anything spirit and everything magic is so taboo, and it just has a lot of fear based around it. So what does it mean to be woke? Woke is just basically being aware of the matrix, being aware of the tools of the matrix or the system used to keep everybody on the damn down, right? And you see me glancing over this side because I just made some notes of things that I think are important. So being woke is just like, it's like opening your eyes or opening up your senses to a way that you can be able to tell and that something is not right. You might not know what it is, but you just have a lot of attention towards things in the third dimension. You might not really see beyond what is happening, but you have a telltale in terms of like, nah man, this is not right. You know, why is the moon going on like this? Why is the weather changed so drastically over the couple of moons? How is it that human interaction has changed? How intense that we feel emotions and such and such. You might not be able to put it that way specifically, but your experience might be different in terms of what you're woke about. You might be woke to religion. Be like, if this is like this, if Jesus died at 33 and we have 33 vertebrates, and his 12 disciples speaks about the cranial nerves. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but yeah, and all of these things, and you just feel like a certain inclination to question things. That means that you are becoming woke, or you are a woke person, especially when you have questions in terms of like more questions than you have answers. Then you might be a woke person, a person that is aware, that knows that there's something beyond the physical realm, but you don't know what it is. Now the thing is about woke people, they are usually still in that place where they find religion to be relevant, because they know that they have a lot of questions regarding religion, but they never really know what it is. They can never really break the barrier or the fringes of their knowledge in terms of like what is actually possible and what might be true and what might not be true. But they just know that something is a bit fishy, and they tend to pull away from the things that they feel uncomfortable understanding or understanding and subscribing to. Yeah. So a conscious person is a person that, you know, I think being conscious, I know being conscious is like a step from being woke, because consciousness in itself is your ability to observe yourself and also look at the observations that you are making and why you have those observations about things. A conscious person would be like, I'll shout at the kid now. For example, you have a kid and you shout at the kid and be like, man, why am I shouting at the kid? What happened? Why am I feeling this way? Is there something bothering me? Or are there certain entities or people that are sending me these feelings or these thoughts? You become more aware of yourself, but also you become aware more of the external, you know? And you view the external based on how you feel inside, and not the other way around. And you have the tendency of really dissecting your brain, you know. And a disclaimer that I had in my previous videos is this, that the brain, the physical brain itself, is just a representation of what the mind is or what the mind is doing. The mind is not just your brain, like your physical brain. You have three minds, right? You have your crown chakra as your first mind, you have your heart, your center, as your second mind, and you have your solar plexus, which is your third mind, which is more instinctual, and this has to do with your feelings, and then obviously this has to do with your thoughts. And you look at it as a conscious being, and you be like, I'm more aware of myself, more aware of my surrounding, more aware of my senses. And it's a higher tone of frequency that you are usually resonating in. You're able to be more conscious in terms of, even if you're not good at school, right? Like in the traditional sense of education, you might find yourself at a certain point when your consciousness reaches higher levels of vibrations. You might just start to develop a certain wisdom to certain things. You might even tend to find your talents and your different areas of expertise because of how conscious and expanded your thinking, your consciousness has become. And a person that is conscious, yes, there are different level of consciousness depending on which mind you resonate in. You get what I'm saying? And when you're a conscious being, you 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 tend to disregard all the other logical things that in terms of practicality. You don't rely on things that are practical entirely. You have a thing of, this is where people speak about my soul, people who understand frequency, vibrations, and energy, and they understand. They might even have a scientific backgrounds on how to dissect the dimensions and what it is. Let me give you an example of Omar Johnson. You know how he speaks that black people come from Egypt. That's a higher level of consciousness. And consciousness is basically just the ability to tap into levels of information or knowledge. Let's say, for example, being woke is having knowledge. Being conscious is applying the knowledge. You get me? You're applying the knowledge, so that means you become a wise person. If you just for the lack of a better word, in third dimensional terms. So that's how you bring it together as being a conscious person. You might even use like incense. You might love the smell of incense and stuff like that. You might even try and imitate. Conscious people may try to imitate spiritual people or spiritual beings in terms of how they operate on a daily basis. Now, bringing in the third one, being spiritual. What does spiritual people or spiritual beings do? Spiritual beings do spiritual shit. Spiritual people cannot be religious. This monotheist approach we have to what spirits are actually doing, because we are spirits, right? And there are spirits around us. They are always spiritual entities, because the spiritual realm and is just so vast in terms of bringing it down. And spiritual beings are beings that practice. They don't apply, they practice spiritual shit. That is the most fundamental thing. They might not know as much as conscious beings, but they are so in tune that even just one practice or one thing allows them already to gain, to distribute, and to store power. Spiritual power, of course. And being a spiritual being usually is people that are usually in the third dimension, but they don't necessarily engage in third dimensional stuff. They are much more concerned about the spiritual realm. They pray, they meditate, they eat healthy, they think healthy, they feel healthy. And if they don't, they are always striving to think, feel, and be better, and not being attached to anything, or not being attached to third dimensional situation, places, people, and things. Spiritual beings usually care about, they're so concerned about what they think, what they feel, and also what they give out. They are so conscious in terms of, they are so aware, they are so tapped in, they are so tuned in. Being a spiritual person, you also get to understand that it's not being perfect that perfection that you're striving for. You're striving for consistency, being more spiritual, or being better than I was yesterday. And one thing I've realized about being a spiritual person is that everything really affects you. I think that is one of the most negative things that I've realized, is that you become more sensitive. And you only become sensitive because, like, I, for myself, I come from an ancestral background, and I realized that the only thing that makes you vulnerable is a sense of not using your power. You know, there are different archetypes of being spiritual. You can be a healer, you can be a magician, you can be an explorer, you can be a sage. The list goes on. There are so many different archetypes. And it's just you deciding where your power is. And I've spoken about power in my previous videos, but yes, so those are the specific differences between being woke, being conscious, and being spiritual. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. For everybody that's been subscribing to my channel, thank you very much. And those that have been consistently watching my content, big thumbs up.